Ever get lost staring at a stained glass window? You know, how the light hits it just right? Or maybe you've seen those videos, the ones where they're working with molten glass, turning it into these incredible shapes.
Mesmerizing, isn't it?
Totally. But have you ever thought about what it actually takes to, like, be a glassblower? I mean, it's got to be more than just, like, playing with fire all day, right?
Right. Well, they don't call it a hot shot for nothing.
Right. Okay, so speaking of hot shops, you've been curious about hands-on creative careers lately, and that's what we're diving into today. We're going deep on glass blowing to see if it's the right fit for you.
It really is a fascinating craft. Almost mythical in a way.
Totally. And to help us separate fact from fantasy, we're using these really detailed career guides from RoleCatcher. They're a platform that helps people figure out, well, all the practical stuff about different jobs.
It's one thing to be drawn to the artistry of it all,
Right.
but RoleCatcher digs into the skills you need, the day-to-day realities. They even have AI tools to help with, like interview prep. Really interesting stuff.
Super practical. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back up to the basics. What is a glassblower? What do they actually do all day?
Yeah, it's not all about the heat, though there's definitely a lot of that. Basically, RoleCatcher defines a glassblower, or more formally, a glass artisan, as someone who uses, molten glass to design and create stuff. Decorative items, functional pieces.
Okay, so it's more than just those like fancy vases you see in art galleries.
Oh yeah, way more. Think stained glass windows, delicate ornaments, even those specialized pieces used in science labs. They do it all.
Whoa, I didn't even think about the science side of things. That's so cool. It sounds like it takes a lot of precision, especially for those scientific pieces.
Absolutely. Precision, creativity, and serious technical skill.
And actually, I remember the Rollcatcher guide mentioned something about restoration work too, right? Like with historical pieces.
Exactly. Restoration is a huge part of the field, especially for those drawn to the history of glass blowing. Imagine restoring a stained glass window in a centuries-old cathedral. It's like high-stakes art conservation.
Wow, I bet. Talk about pressure. You're not just making something new, you're preserving history. Okay, so we've got the artistic side, the science applications, the restoration aspect. That's a pretty wide range, wouldn't you say?
It is. And that's not even getting into the sheer variety of materials and techniques. People think glass blowing, and they picture one thing.
Right, like one process.
But there's so many types of glass,
Mhm.
each with its own, melting point, properties, how it reacts to different tools, and the techniques.
Mhm.
Blowing, molding, casting, slumping. It's a whole vocabulary.
Wow, it's like this whole other language. No wonder people get hooked on it. But gotta ask, working with molten glass, I mean, that can't be the safest job in the world, right?
It definitely has its risks. RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from that. The guide is very upfront about the physical demands. You're dealing with extreme heat from the furnaces, so burns are always a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the fumes and particles released during, like, the actual glass blowing process.
Wow.
Definitely something to be aware of, especially for your respiratory health.
Yeah, it sounds like aspiring glass blowers would need to be comfortable with a certain level of, I don't know, like calculated risk.
For sure. It's not a desk job.
Definitely not. So, what about the career itself? Can you actually make a living as a glassblower?
That's where things get, well, it's not always straightforward. The job market can be competitive, and income varies a lot. It depends on your skill level, what you specialize in, whether you work independently or for a studio.
Mm-hmm.
Even where you live plays a role.
So a lot of factors at play.
Yeah, a lot of factors.
It's definitely not a, what's the phrase, a walk in the park. Or maybe in this case, a stroll through a gallery.
Yeah.
But hey, let's say someone is listening and they're thinking, okay, molten glass, competitive job market, I'm in.
Right.
What's the actual path to becoming a glassblower?
It's interesting you say path because it's not always the most conventional one.
How so?
Well, with some careers, right, you get a degree and that's kind of like your ticket in. But RoleCatcher really emphasized the apprenticeship route for glassblowing.
Oh, so it's more of that hands-on learning from a master kind of thing?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Think like the old guilds, those traditional ways of passing down a craft. A high school diploma is usually a starting point, sure, but practical experience, that's everything in this field.
Makes sense. You can't exactly learn to like wrangle molten glass from a textbook.
Exactly. You've got to be in the hot shop, feeling the heat, getting your hands dirty.
So apprenticeships, hands-on experience. What about people who prefer, a more structured learning environment? Are there actual, like, schools for this?
Oh, absolutely. There are art schools and colleges that offer some really incredible glass blowing programs. You can get certificates, even degrees in it.
Wow, I had no idea. So what do those programs like combine actual studio time with, classroom learning?
Yeah, totally. You'll be learning about design principles, the chemistry of glass, even the history of glass blowing. It's pretty comprehensive.
So you're getting like a well-rounded education in glass art. Like we said earlier, it always comes back to experience. So how important is it for aspiring glass blowers to build a portfolio?
It's essential. Your portfolio is basically your resume in this world.
Yeah.
It's how you show off your skills, your style. Potential employers, clients, they want to see what you can do, not just what you know.
Right. It's like that saying, show, don't tell, but instead of words, it's like beautiful glass sculptures.
Exactly.
Speaking of putting yourself out there, the RoleCatcher guide also mentioned networking. And I know everyone says networking is important, but how does it actually work in like the glass blowing world?
Networking in this field is huge. It's how you make connections, find opportunities, stay inspired. Think about attending glassblowing festivals, meeting around artists, seeing different techniques in person.
Mhm.
That's invaluable.
There's that in-person thing again. Being in the thick of it, it sounds like there's a real sense of community in the glass blowing world, which, when you think about it, makes total sense. You're all bonded by this like shared passion for this ancient, almost magical art form.
It's true. There's something really special about that.
But real talk networking can be kind of intimidating, even for us extroverts. Did RoleCatcher have any like tips for that?
Well, remember those AI-powered tools we mentioned earlier? That's where they come in handy.
Oh, right, the AI career coach thing.
Okay.
Okay, I'll admit, I was a little skeptical at first, but now I'm really curious. How can AI help with something as, like, human as networking?
Well, picture this. You've got a tool that can look at job descriptions, but it doesn't just see words. It sees the skills employers are really after, even the super specific ones for glassblowing, like experience with certain types of glass or mastering a specific technique that's in high demand.
So it's like having a secret decoder ring for job postings. Instead of getting overwhelmed, you can actually figure out which skills to highlight, how to make yourself stand out.
Yeah, you got it.
That's actually incredibly useful. What else can this AI career coach do so it can like analyze the job market and help you figure out which skills to focus on?
Exactly. It takes the guesswork out of tailoring your resume and, actually presenting yourself as the ideal candidate.
That's super smart. It's like having a career strategist in your back pocket.
Right. And get this, it even helps with interview prep.
Oh yeah. How so? I always get nervous in interviews.
I hear you. But imagine, instead of just like practicing in front of the mirror, you're actually having a mock interview with this AI. And it's not just tell me about yourself. It's tailored to glass blowing jobs.
So it's asking you questions that like an actual blast blowing studio owner would ask.
Yeah. And it gives you feedback on your answers. Like maybe you need to sound more confident when you talk about certain techniques, or maybe you're using too much jargon.
That is wild. Okay, I am officially impressed. It's like having a personal coach, but for your career.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that's the beauty of platforms like RoleCatcher, right? They're using technology to help people navigate those sometimes, well, kind of overwhelming aspects of pursuing a creative career.
Totally. Because let's be real, the creative part, the actual glass blowing, that should be the fun part,
Well,
not the job hunting and the interview stress.
exactly. Okay, so let's imagine someone's listening to all this and they're like, sign me up. Where do I even start? What's like a concrete first step someone can take if they're intrigued by glass blowing?
Ooh, good question. And a great way to wrap things up.
Well, it's actually pretty simple. Just look up local glassblowing studios or art centers near you. A lot of them offer like introductory classes, workshops. That's the best way to dip your toes in, see if you actually enjoy the heat, the creativity, the whole experience.
It's true. Sometimes you gotta just go for it and try it out. Who knows? You might discover a hidden talent. And that, my friends, is a wrap on our deep dive into the fascinating world of glass blowing. We hope you learned a thing or two, maybe even got inspired to try something new. Until next time, keep those creative sparks flying.